Welcome to Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. This podcast is about the journey to a more sustainable future in order for us to be able to do our bit to achieve net zero. I'll be discussing a variety of topics with experts in their field in order to educate and increase our knowledge of clean energy, electric vehicles and the electric vehicle infrastructure. So whether you're an individual wanting to make a difference at home, a small business or a corporate, this podcast is just for you. So today I'm talking to Karl Anders from Mayor, and just like to say thank you very much for joining me, Karl, and welcome to Electric Evolution. And Karl has actually been managing director at Mayor for just a short while now, haven't you? But you've got a long kind of background of working in kind of sort of the journey to electrification, which is kind of what I'm on at the moment. So again, welcome. And just could you give me a little bit of your background to start off with, please? How did you get to where you are now?
Sure. Thanks, Liz. And thanks for the invite. It's great to talk to you again. From myself, I'm a car person by trade. So when I left university, I went into marketing for Hyundai. So my background is from there. That was overseas. And then I was also in dealer operations. And then I did some stints through the dealer networks. I'm just trying to remember them in sequence here. And then 10 years with General Motors. So I was in future strategy at GM, so for Vauxhall, Saab and Chevrolet. Then I spent some time within fleet. And so it's within fleet we first started to get vehicles like the Astra Eco 4. Some of the first cars that were really focused on low emissions. It was a diesel. It was very aerodynamic with different gearing. And then we started adding things like Chevrolet and Cadillac. So some vehicles I didn't really want to be associated with. So I then went and joined Energy Saving Trust. So Energy Saving Trust, we were advising people on low emission transport, and we were doing green fleet reviews for government departments and also for major corporates. So looking at their entire fleet policy and what they were spending, how they were managing it, the vehicles they operated, the data they were using, and that pretty quickly, I went to EST in about 2007. And we started on electric vehicles around 2010, 2011, although they were very different to the vehicles that are available today.
I can imagine.
So 7 years of doing that, and I went and joined at 2014. I was the national EV manager at Nissan GB. Okay. So that really was focusing on Leaf and ENV. And we were at about 85% of the electric vehicle van market in the UK. And about 65% of the electric car market. Wow. So I have a bit of a history in electric vehicles. So Nissan for 4 years, and that's when I moved into infrastructure. Firstly, working for RWE, which is one of the big energy companies, and I started their energy division under Energy Renewables here in the UK. That was from them. And then I built that company up, and then we sold it in December last year, 2021. So it moved from RWE, which is the owners of npower, to being a subsidiary of E.ON.
Oh, right. Okay.
So I worked with an E.ON, and then we sold the company to a German competitor, Compleo, back in December 21. I was consulting with them through this year until I've now ended up running the Mayor companies here in the UK. But my EV history goes back further. My father had a small, well, you could call it an electric car, more of an electric quadricycle, really, back in the 1990s.
Right.
So the 1990s was the first time I drove an EV, and the oldest EV I've ever driven was a 1904 Waverley. So I have actually a 115-year-old EV.
I was talking about this. I've got a little team, and we were talking about this yesterday, and kind of like, how long electric vehicles have actually been around. And we were talking about the electric milk floats, and I must admit, I remember moving down south in 95, and I thought, because up north, because it's so hilly where I'm from in Halifax, it's so hilly, we did not have electric milk floats. They would not have made the hills. So coming down here, I could hear this funny little noise, and I was like, what the heck? And saw these little milk floats, and I just thought, oh my God, all I could think of was Ernie and the fastest milk float in the West, So that's kind of what sprang to mind. But they've been around for a long time, haven't they, really?
That's classic. That's classic Benny Hill. But
Exactly.
prior to Benny, if you look back and find the very first car that ever hit 100 kilometers or 60 mile per hour,
Yeah.
um, it was called Le Jamais Content. So it was 1897, I think. So they were setting speed limits in electric vehicles back in the late 1800s, and I think
Whoa.
one of the very first hybrids that was developed was by the original Mr. Porsche. Um, and that was called a Lerner Porsche, and I think that was 1898.
I
So
love this
Porsche started with
knowledge.
yeah.
You are a font of knowledge, aren't you? Goodness me. I love that.
I've been in EV too long.
So actually moving on to what Mayor do, can you just kind of give everybody a little bit of background to what Mayor do?
Well, Mayor in the electric vehicle charging infrastructure industry, the company is not that long. So basically, it's 6 different companies across Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Two in Norway, sorry, one in Norway, one in Sweden, 2 in Germany, 2 in the UK. So I'm managing director of the 2 UK entities. The first one, which is Mayor Fleet Solutions, is based up in Consett, County Durham.
Yeah.
And they do fleet solutions, so basically depot charging and home charging for fleets, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So they're based up there. And the second one, Mayor UK Public Charging, is based in London, in Bishopsgate, and that's a public network. So we have a couple of hundred chargers right across the UK where the public can go and charge their cars en route or destination. So they're the 2 different organizations, both in charging, but both very different. One a public charging network, one a provider of charging solutions.
Okay. And Mayor's owned by Statcraft, isn't it?
That's
So
correct.
they're quite different again, aren't they?
They are. Statcraft are owned by the Norwegian government, and they are Europe's biggest renewable energy generator. So
I was really interested here when I read that. Yeah, that's really interesting.
well, they're based in Oslo in Norway, but at the moment, so what they do is mainly hydro was what they were started. Statcraft's been going over 100 years. But they're mainly hydro, and then also onshore wind, offshore wind, and also solar generation. So a lot of the wind farms that are going up in the west of Ireland, etc., are Statcraft. So it's all 100% renewable energy. And then we have distribution companies like Bright Energy, which is 100% renewable. And then we get all our energy from them. So it's holistic. So you generate renewable, you only distribute energy, which is renewable, and then we have the Mayor Group, which is the infrastructure companies, the 6 of them, that then basically put them into the cars at the end of it. So it's a very strong sustainability message.
Definitely. And you manufacture, supply, and install, don't you? You do the whole thing. Is that right?
In terms of infrastructure, we don't actually manufacture. We use a lot, but we do have a back end that we use as well across those. The company I used to run here, Energy UK, we were a manufacturer, whereas Mayor is more the solution side, not actually building the stuff.
I get you. Oh, crikey. So my question then now is, so you drive an EV, don't you?
Of course I do.
How long have you been driving an EV, and what are you currently driving?
So the first one I drove was in the 90s. And then being at Nissan, I had a series of Nissan Leafs, strangely enough. But like most people, I had a Leaf as a second car, but also a Qashqai as well. And when I first started driving them, the Qashqai was my first car and the Leaf was our second car. But quite quickly, I realized that, with an 80, 90 mile range, I could do a lot of my driving in the Leaf. So I was in the Leaf for ages. And towards the end of my time at Nissan, I started working on a new car, which is called the Ariya. And the Ariya is a SUV coupe, sort of mid-size. And we were starting work on that vehicle. And then I left in 2018. And then in the energy years, getting hold of an EV was impossible. So I've had a succession of Mercedes plug-in hybrids. Although my last one, which went back after 2 years, the A250, was delivered with a quarter of a tank of petrol. That lasted me 6 months. I filled it up once and it went back with a quarter of that tank. So 10,000 miles in 2 years, because I had the charging at the office and charging at home. and other than that was train stations. So I literally did 10,000 miles on a tank of petrol.
Oh my God.
But that, I think the app was telling me I was on 600 miles a gallon or something silly. But that went back, and then as soon as I've joined here at Mayor, I've gone strangely. I've got one of the very first Nissan Harriers in the country.
Have you?
So it's if you can imagine the starship that Darth Vader drives,
Yeah.
it's like being in a Tron game to drive. So it'll do well over 300 miles per charge. It's
Does
incredible,
it? Goodness me.
incredible interior, really well built. It's very much a premium vehicle without a premium badge. So I absolutely love my area. So the work we did back in 2018 finally paid off.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. So how do you find the actual, obviously, like you're saying, you've got, was it 200 chargers across,
Yeah.
across the country so far? So how do you find the charging network when you can't get to a Mayor, charger?
It's relatively easy because they're programmed in the cars. So in terms of charging a car, it's very, or you can go onto ZapMap. So ZapMap has all the networks. And you do
Yeah.
have the cards now that allow roaming right across, excuse me, they allow roaming right across the networks. So you have things like I've got a power card, and I've also got my Octopus Electric Universe card. And that will cover most of the charging across the UK. I recently did 1,500 miles from John O'Groats to Land's End as part of the GB EV rally. So it's
Were
1,500
you
miles
in
in
that?
5 days. So 24 cars and 24 vans from the top of Scotland to the bottom, the long way around the country.
Yeah.
And we found it a lot easier than we thought. Once you have to do it, you realize how easy it is.
Because this is the thing I said to you, didn't I? I'm from Halifax originally. So my concern has been, obviously, what vehicle do I get? I was just talking to another chap about this as well, but how would I be able to get from Reading up to Halifax, which is about 220 miles? Could I, can I get there on one charge? It's things like that. So I suppose the cars that have got bigger batteries and more capacity, it'll make a difference, but there's some that haven't got that capacity, haven't they?
There is, but then you'd have to think about, particularly if they've got reasonably quick charging. So literally, and one thing we found doing those mileages was you don't sit and wait for an hour to charge. You literally do shorter hops. So how far did you say Halifax was?
About
150?
220 miles.
220. So if you've got an EV that, even an early one that does say 150, you don't what you would do is you'd probably go about 130, 140 miles, stick the car on the charger for about 20, 30 minutes while you're having a tea, having a comfort break or something like that. You don't have to think about charging from empty to full. You just do enough to get there. So that's what we found. We rarely charge more than 20, 25 minutes. And my co-driver was in his 60s, and he can't go more than 2 hours driving without stopping for a wee. So we would start
You do.
and literally Steve would start with, you realize we've got 2.5 wee stops range. So
I love that.
220 miles, you're going to do that. That's going to take quite a few hours. That you're a 3 or 4 hour drive.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be doing that as a 3 or 4 hour drive without a stop anyway.
Yeah.
If you can stop halfway and stick it on a charger for 20 minutes, wow, you can go well beyond. I can almost make Scotland here in my car.
That is really, and you're not that far away from, you're kind of, you're probably about 45 minutes away from where I live in Reading.
Yeah. Here in West Oxford.
Yeah. So it's good to know that, because I think a lot of people, and it's the same with us, that we just need to think a bit differently about how we're managing our journeys. I mean, like you said, when I was a lot younger, I could drive. I used to set off to go to Halifax at 7 o'clock at night. I'd be there by 10:30, 11. I'm not telling the speeds I used to get up to, but anyway, that's beside the point. We won't say anything there. but it's and I kind of could sit in the car for 3-4 hours. But actually, these days, I'm in my 50s. It's something that actually, I'm not saying I need to have wee stops all the time, but You just do need to get out and stretch your legs, because it's not good for you anyway, is it? So actually, if you kind of think of it like that, and it's a bit like the way we charge our phones. I don't know about you, but we were both talking before we started the recording, weren't we, about phones? And I've got the iPhone that I've got, the battery's naff. I'm not saying that, I don't know what happens with the battery on an electric vehicle, but actually, you have to charge a different way. You have to manage the way you charge your phone. So I'm assuming the car's no different.
Absolutely right, and it's a bit strange, but you change it in the very first few weeks. You get things like range anxiety and that, but once you learn how to do it, you wonder how the hell. Because I do think the kids coming through now, in 10 or 20 years' time, when they're driving and we're all electric vehicles, I think if you then go to them and say, well, back in the day, in the old days when we had petrols and diesels, we used to have to go to petrol stations. Your car didn't charge when you're asleep at night at home. When you stopped and stuck it on a charger, we actually had to go somewhere and physically put, 60 liters of high explosive into our cars. And I really think we're going to get to the stage, and you change and adapt. But on your point of batteries, an EV battery is very different from a phone battery.
Okay.
They're highly engineered, they're over-engineered. I think the first 10 years at Nissan, I remember the statistics, 350,000 batteries, they replaced about 5 or 6 of them. EV batteries, most of them have an 8-year warranty anyway. But the problem we have with second life batteries, of trying to sell the batteries into other users, recycle them, is they don't go wrong. Taxi drivers who do 150, 200,000 miles in an EV defleet them when the seats fall apart. The batteries are still there, and they're back to value.
I remember my dad used to always say, oh, I never keep a car past 100,000 miles. Oh, you never do. So that's been in my head, like when it starts heading up to sort of like 80, 90,000 miles, I'm like, we should really look for another car.
I've seen 200,000 mile taxis out there who are electric vehicles that are always in motion. So a 150,000 mile diesel engine is junk. It's not worth a lot. A battery that's at 90%, 95% at that time, electric EV battery, is still worth thousands of pounds. So the vehicle still has an expensive asset on board, whereas a diesel gearbox is worthless.
I mean, and just going back to what you were saying about young people driving vehicles in the years to come. My son is 17. He's literally just started driving. He's started driving lessons, so he's on his about 5th or his 6th driving lesson. And it took me a while to persuade him, because I said it's a life lesson, and he might as well actually learn before he goes to university when he can't actually afford it, while we're kind of looking after him. But what he didn't get until I explained it was the fact that, yes, everything's going to, we're going to be driving electric vehicles, but actually learning to drive, you need to learn to drive in a manual car. Because if you learn to drive in an electric car, you can keep, or an automatic, you can keep driving that automatic, can't you? But you can't drive a manual. So if he ever gets into a situation in future where he has to drive a manual, at least he's got it. Because you can drive both. If you've been on a manual, you can drive automatic or electric, obviously, which is automatic, but you can't do the other way around, can you? So I had to explain that to him.
You're absolutely right, but the number of manuals, even with petrols and diesels, everyone's more going towards automatics, and a lot less manuals around. But also, an EV may drive like an auto, but it's not an auto. It just doesn't have a gearbox. It doesn't need one.
Yeah, of course. But I'm really looking forward to it. I'm hoping to get a drive day in the next few weeks, months. So because I've actually there are a couple of EVs that I've got my kind of heart set on, but I need to drive them, because at the moment I've got no frame of reference.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But that's to drive them, and people, I think that's when you change your perception of an EV, because they're built differently. So in terms of weight, you haven't got a big heavy engine at the front. Weight's further back, and all the weight of the battery is heavy, but it's very low. So it does actually handle a little bit differently. It's a lot better. And also with an EV, from hit the accelerator and it goes. That's why you don't need a gearbox.
That's what I've heard. I've also heard that people who are driving EV trucks, EV lorries and vans, or as trucks, the bigger, the bigger they are, have to have driving lessons again in a way, because, or not necessarily, or a little bit of more understanding about, kind of the power that the EV electric truck actually has.
It is massive, and you're absolutely right, and it is something to think about because these kids are coming through, and traditionally they'd have like a 1 litre diesel as a petrol Fiesta or Corsa as their first car. An EV is just so much faster than a petrol or diesel. It's almost like coming out of, so we'll get to the point where they'll come out of doing their license straight to an EV, and it's like dropping them into a V8 BMW because it's we do need to think about that because an EV is so much more fast and powerful than a petrol or diesel, that you need to think about. These guys are now coming to quick cars.
It's like my son at the moment is saying, oh, he had a driving lesson last week and he didn't quite get his seat right. And you know what it's like when you haven't got your seat right when you're in the car, and it's not as if he's an experienced driver who can, like I can be driving somewhere and I'll get a traffic lights and I'll be like just adjusting my seat, whereas he can't. So he had the whole lesson in the wrong seat, slightly wrong seat position. And then this week he said, oh, trying to get clutch control was a bit difficult. But once we go electric, there's not going to be any of that, is there? It's just going to be foot down, and you're gonna, I can imagine it's kind of a very, very different experience.
It is, and in terms of the difference in speed, particularly and things like that, I did once see a video, and there was I think there was 2 Porsche 911 GT3s racing. One of them was on its own, but the one that beat it was actually on a trailer being towed by a basic Tesla. So the Tesla towing the Porsche on a trailer was faster than the Porsche, and I think it was a GT3. We're talking about extreme Porsche acceleration here.
Wow! Oh my goodness!
I think BBC Click did one where they had an Aston Martin GT race car, with a professional driver, and next to it, I think it was also a Tesla, and they put in a weather girl from the BBC, sort of never drew it, and she absolutely slaughtered the professional racing driver in his Aston.
Oh, that sounds amazing. I have to say I do love my cars, but like I say, at the moment we've got a VW Golf, which I do love, but it's still polluting, sure. So actually that's what my aim is. So this podcast is basically about a learning and understanding of EVs, the infrastructure, and also, like I say, because we also as a family want to introduce clean energy sources, be more sustainable in the house. We haven't got the money like Robert Llewellyn, bless him, but if we can actually learn more and sort of do this, then that's what I want to get from this podcast, and get the word out there that there are things that we can do, and some things do cost money, but there are other things that we can do that cost less, to become sustainable and get to net zero and that kind of thing.
Yeah, in terms of cars, an EV costs more than a petrol or diesel, but most people don't go out and basically put the money down. They will tend to buy a car on a monthly payment.
Yeah.
And that gap is much, much, much closer between an EV and a petrol or diesel vehicle. But also, as we go through, and it's obviously going to be illegal to buy a petrol and diesel in 7 years' time, residual values will change even more. So therefore, you'll get parity, even though the sticker price might be higher. But you're not paying for petrol. So I've put mine. I've got solar panels in the house, so all my Mercs were. I'd actually use the 3-pin plug. And when the solar panels are up, so basically it was free petrol for 2 years. Brilliant. Whereas now with the big battery EV, I do it at night, so it costs me very, very little. So that's what you got to do.
So Karl, can you tell me what types of organisation you are looking to work with at Mayor?
Well, several different ones. So within Mayor Fleet, we're looking at fleets who are looking at going on the electrification journey, where we can put charging and operate them for people. And for the public side, the public charging, it's obviously people to go and use Mayor chargers, but also more people like retail organizations that are looking at putting in public chargers on their sites, facilities management companies, people like that. So, for anybody who is looking at taking that journey, companies or drivers, our email address is hello.uk@mayor, MER that is, .eco. ECO. So if anybody wants to get in touch with us, just drop us a line to that. So hello.uk@mayor.eco, and we'll be happy to help.
And the web address is kind of without the hello at, isn't it? And it's the kind of, yeah.
It's www. It's actually at uk.mayor.eco.
And mayor is MER.
That's correct.
Just for people.
It's the Norwegian word for more. Mayor.
Perfect. Well, listen, thank you ever so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. And I will definitely get you back on here. So thank you again. And I will speak to you soon. And goodbye to everyone else. Bye-bye. You've been watching Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. Don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell icon, and you'll receive all of our weekly videos. Thanks for watching. See you soon.